You're someone with a vision for your practice, for your side hustle, and for your personal journey. But when it comes to establishing your path on how to get to where you want to be with your practice, things get a little messy. You're also someone who'd prefer to go in person instead of to groups and listening to everyone else's story. To me, it sounds like you could benefit from one-on-one consulting with our experienced Practice of the Practice consultants. From $5.95 a month and up, you can work with a consultant that will give you more direction and practical, tried and tested tips matched to you and your goals. For more information, visit practiceofthepractice.com/apply. Again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/apply. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanok, session number 1286. I'm Joe Sanok, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast, where we help you build a thriving private practice you absolutely love. And we want to help you just love your practice. We want it to be this thing that you can't believe that you've started, that you say to yourself, oh my word, like this is what I've created. Today, I'm going to be doing a solo episode. I'm going to be sharing 15 surprising ways to use AI in your private practice. This is something that I think we've covered a lot of AI on here. We use it quite a bit with Practice of the Practice. But before we dive in, I want to just disclose to you, I did use AI to gather my thoughts, to bring it together, to get some good prompts. But as I look at this list, I'm adding my own things to it. One of the biggest problems with AI is it's too perfect. People can spot an AI email. They can spot an AI landing page. You need to have a person go through it and kind of look at how you speak and then train the AI to speak like you. So say it makes a landing page for, we've got our 7-figure practice retreat in the Dominican Republic. It started with me just kind of brain dumping all of the stuff that I wanted in that. You can just use the audio function or the transcribe function for that. And then saying, bring this all together in a web page, and then looking at how does that spell it out? Does it do a good job kind of answering questions? And then what would I adjust? And then saying, here's how I've adjusted this. Tell me what you've learned about how I speak that's different from what you assumed. And so there's a lot of kind of training when it comes to AI. So we're going to be talking about all sorts of different ways that you can use AI that maybe you hadn't thought of. One of the best things to learn right from the beginning is to give prompts saying what role you want the AI to play. So do you want it to act like an attorney in Michigan? Do you want it to act like an accountant? Do you want it to act like you? Giving it some context is really helpful. And then to say things like, what assumptions do you have about me or about this situation that you are going to assume that helps you kind of operate, to think? And so if I say, I want you to act like a business attorney. So actually, I did this the other day. So I'm going to be launching a podcast series in the future of me starting a counseling practice from scratch, only working 2 hours a week. We haven't decided exactly when we're going to launch it. This coming week, I'm going to be doing some interviews with people around starting the practice to kind of sort out different things. And so I've been recording episodes that obviously we haven't released yet, talking about where I've spent my 2 hours a week. I'm in we've done 2 weeks of it. So 2 weeks last week, or 2 hours last week. And then I'm just wrapping up my 2 hours for this week. But as I do that, I want to make sure that I'm as efficient as possible when I am talking to humans. And so the attorney I'm talking to, for example, I went on AI, and this will probably be something that's one of my points of the 15, but I went through and helped the AI take me as far as I could go. So trying to figure out business licensure in different states and understanding the kind of questions that I should actually ask a real attorney, not just AI, and to sort through all those things ahead of time to say, okay, I don't need maybe a full hour of attorney time. I probably only need 15 minutes because those other 45 minutes, I sorted through those things. So really helping you understand how you're thinking. So let's start with we're going to go through these. These are in no particular order. Turn bulleted notes into full SOAP notes. If you're writing SOAP notes, you can give the prompt, think like a licensed therapist writing SOAP notes for a Michigan-based private practice. You can put your state in there because there may be specific things that you need, or even to say for this Blue Cross Blue Shield contract, you may want to put your contract in there so it can reference that. Turn these bullet points into professional insurance-ready notes. Keep the tone consistent and client identifiers removed. So obviously you're not going to have the client identifiers in ChatGPT. So why this works is it helps you finish your notes faster without losing your authentic tone. Number 2, create treatment plans that will pass insurance audits. And so we want you to think like a clinical supervisor, and especially if you maybe are Gottman level, or you do IFS, or you do a certain modality, you'd want to make sure that you train on that. So say it's an IFS supervisor. You might start with think like an IFS supervisor. Tell me what assumptions you'll make as that supervisor before you go too far, because you don't want a full treatment plan that's based on things that are wrong. So think like a clinical supervisor reviewing treatment plans for an insurance panel. Write a treatment plan for generalized anxiety disorder using CBT and mindfulness-based interventions with measurable goals and expected outcomes. So we always want to make sure we review this with the person, usually treatment plans we're making with the client. But this can also speed things up for us where we come with something to the session. We can build client homework between sessions. I mean, I remember when I was in grad school and after grad school, I would go onto Word and I would make homework based on things we had talked about. I would make little posters. We did this thing. I remember there was this kid where he would escalate so quickly. And so we created something where it said stop, and we had the STOP each stand for something, and made this little poster for his bedroom and the bathroom and the living room. And it was all over the house. You can now use AI to maybe give a prompt like, think like a trauma-informed therapist specializing in self-compassion. Create 5 reflective journal prompts and 3 grounding exercises for a client processing betrayal trauma. So why this works is it makes client engagement easier. It's more customized. And these are things that you could literally do in the session, print out right there and hand to them. It would take seconds to have this come together. Number 4 is to summarize sessions for client follow-up. So think like a compassionate therapist, write a brief strength-based summary for a client after session. Include 2 reminders, 1 affirmation, and 1 focus area for the next week. So thinking about, okay, we covered some big things today in session. I'm going to just send an email for some extra just client care. Now, some of you will say, I don't want to do that work. That's fine. Some of you will say, wow, that's really personalized. I like that. We want to think about the kind of practice we're building. Are we building a practice where we do some of that follow-up? Because whatever we do, we need to continue doing. Because, with most liability insurances and such, if you're communicating regularly with the person and then you stop and that person is in need, you can often be, liable for that. Okay, so that's more like the clinical side of doing kind of some summary, kind of taking your practice up a notch. Now let's dig into some kind of business systems and I just punched the microphone. Got to finish this espresso over here so that I can dig. Give me a second here. Those of you that have listened to the podcast for a while, you probably know that when I had my office before I sold mental wellness counseling, I would leave my coffee across the room. And I just had a flashback back to those early first 100 episodes. We can simplify the intake forms and screening tools. So we can say, this is number 5, think like a UX, that means user experience designer, who builds mental health forms. Rewrite this intake form to be more conversational, trauma-informed, and mobile-friendly. And so why this works is you're creating a better client experience from day one. You can even ask it to act like an app developer, to have applications on your website to speed these things up. You can handle your inbox with AI summaries. Think like an executive assistant for a therapy private practice. Summarize this email thread, flag any action items, and suggest a short reply in my tone, friendly but professional. So, sometimes when we have emails back and forth, like say you're planning to speak at a parent-teacher organization, and there's been a lot of people that are, giving their feedback and their ideas and all of that. It can be hard to keep track of all that. We can use it to summarize this entire email back and forth. And it's going to be especially helpful for your longer insurance or client emails, when you're looking at insurance contracts and things like that. We can automate scheduling reminders. We look at our sponsor today, JotPsych. They're amazing. They're an AI-powered EHR that's built for therapists to automate drafts and handle your scheduling, all that. And so there's lots of tools that are already out there outside of just ChatGPT. They can help you automate a lot of the reminders. So you can say, think like an operations manager for a group practice. Create an automation schedule for appointment reminders, intake forms, and progress note completion deadlines. So this is a great thing that we can do to really automate that process. If you're in private practice, you already know it's not just about seeing clients. It's notes, treatment plans, onboarding, scheduling, insurance, forms, the list goes on and on. JotPsych was built to take the busy work off your plate. It is the first AI-powered EHR made specifically for therapists. It can draft your progress notes automatically, set reminders, handle scheduling, deliver clinical screeners, and help with treatment planning. It's a smart system that learns how you work and then works for you. JotPsych has already supported over 1 million therapy visits and is helping thousands of clinicians save hours every week. You can try it free and get 50% off your first 2 months with code JOE at jotpsych.com/Joe. That's JOT psych.com/Joe. Use code JOE. Next, we want to look at, drafting legal or policy documents. Then you're going to have your attorney review them, of course. We're not going to just do any legal documents on its own. But even if someone sends you a contract, for, say, speaking somewhere, to say, I want you to think like a Michigan-based attorney that specializes in mental health, maybe mental health insurance, claims or mental health, lawsuits, and specializes in public speaking. You can add whatever in there. I want you to review this contract. What would you be concerned about if you were that attorney? To have it scan through a contract and say, okay, I'm concerned about these things. You could have it do that for insurance contracts. You could have it do that for all sorts of different things. So you can say, think like an attorney who specializes in healthcare law in Michigan. Draft a basic confidentiality policy and informed consent form for a solo counseling practice, flagging areas that should be reviewed by a licensed attorney. So we always want a licensed attorney to look at things to make sure that we're good. And you're going to get 80% there before you're paying for an attorney, looking at it. That could be hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. Okay. Next, create a simple budget and cash flow. So the money side of things can get really complicated, not just in our practices, but just in our life. And so, for me, I am also a real estate investor. So I have one Airbnb property that's really busy in the summer. Fingers crossed for next summer also. And we also host intensives and retreats there. And sometimes our consulting clients fly in and we work with their teams. So we do that. Then I also have a multifamily unit that has 3 units. There's money coming and going there as well. I literally right before this heard that I bought it a year ago. I didn't realize that the gutters didn't have those little protectors on it, and they're just like stuffed with leaves and water's just, it's terrible. And so keeping the budget with that, my family budget, and then practice of the practice. And then in starting this new practice that I'm looking at starting, there's going to be a lot of money stuff going on. And so to even just help understand what's going on in your life, to say something like, think like an accountant who practices in Michigan, create a 12-month budget and cash flow projection for a solo counseling practice earning $120,000 a year. Factor in state taxes, liability. I just yawned I am sorry. I'm leaving that in. I did 3 podcast interviews and now I'm doing this solo show. And that yawn just snuck up on me so fast. I couldn't even combat it. Estimated quarterly payments. So the bonus prompt here to think about is suggest 3 areas to reduce expenses by 10% without impacting client care. So we can have it start to think like an accountant for us. Lastly, in this section, write job descriptions and interview questions. So we can do a prompt like, think like an HR recruiter for a counseling group that prioritizes diversity and inclusion. Write a job description for a part-time therapist specializing in EMDR, and develop 5 interview questions that access emotional intelligence and collaboration. So we can say whatever factors we want. If we want to, have a job description for someone that works on the weekends and is looking to moonlight, instead of working at CMH, maybe they, just Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays. This attracts the right candidates while staying compliant and inclusive. So we're going to want to make sure that you know your state laws, that you understand hiring practices, and not just the legal, but also just your own, morals and ethics. Okay, next we want to kind of dive into some strategic thinking. Now, when we're thinking strategically, we're walking through not just how do I keep things going that are happening right now, but how do I really forecast the future for what I want out of this practice? So AI as your private practice strategist. Now, this might kind of replace me at some point, but I want you to be successful. I want you to be thinking forward and ahead and saying, think like a private practice consultant, or think like Joe Sanok, who helps therapists scale sustainably. I'm a solo practitioner seeing 20 clients a week. What are 5 ways I can increase my revenue without adding more hours? And so to say, I want more revenue, I want to hire people, to start to think differently. These are tools that are going to get you, forward faster without ever having to give me a dime. Now, there are things that we offer that I think humans are always going to be able to offer. When we think about therapy, we know that it's not just going to disappear because of AI, but you're at least more strategic on how you're spending your money. Also, the default, shouldn't just be you work with someone like myself. The default should be, how do you really figure out what you need and do that most? Next, we can have, for number 12, we can say, explore ethical dilemmas before consulting peers. So you could say something like, think like an ethics consultant for therapists. List 3 perspectives a counselor should consider before engaging in dual relationships in a small town. And so you can start to say, here's the situation. I'm trying to figure out what to best do here. What do you think? You can always talk to colleagues. You can always talk to your supervisor, but this then helps you have some ideas outside of them as well. So it frames those ethical reflections before having to consult your peers. Next, we can kind of speed up your continuing ed learning. So think like an academic summarizing research for clinicians. Summarize the key takeaways from this CEU article on trauma-informed care in less than 200 words and suggest 3 ways to apply it in practice. So we're still doing the CE work, but we're saying if you're going to do it, how do you really make sure that it connects with your brain, that you have some good actions with it, that if you want to grow, how do you make sure that you continue to grow? Next, repurpose 1 piece of content into 5. I love this one. So this is something that as I've been writing, Dating After Betrayal. So that's a book that I'm writing now. It's going to be available online soon. And I've been putting together these affirmation posters that go with it, some ways to kind of schedule out your life, to think through just what you want, some red flags, some checklists on how to know if you're ready to date again. And so I wrote a whole bunch of it, and then I had the AI look through it and said, what are some bonuses that you would suggest if you're thinking like a marketer? And so then it said, these affirmations posters. And then I said, I want you to think like a middle-aged woman who is a therapist and focuses in these areas. What would be frustrating or offensive about this book, or frustrating or offensive about these bonuses, to have multiple ways of viewing the content. Because sometimes ChatGPT will give you something, but it's only from that lens as a marketer. So you may say, okay, I want to increase sales by 1,000%, but it sounds so slimy and it's not you. We want to then say, okay, I want you to think like a dad that's scheduling therapy for his daughters. All right. How does this come across to him? Kind of slimy. Okay, well, we don't want that. So when you're looking at your content, we want to say things like, think like a social media strategist for a trauma therapist. Turn this blog post, so maybe you've already written a blog post, into 3 Instagram captions, 1 short reel script, and 1 newsletter paragraph using an encouraging professional tone. And so once once it starts to learn what you like, because what you like might be different than what I like. So the Instagram captions, you might be like, I hate those, and I might love them. The script for a reel of what to talk about, you might really like or not like. And then the newsletter paragraph, we want to make sure it doesn't sound too perfect to AI. And then we want to start to check in on your own burnout. So you could probably think like a therapist coach specializing in burnout prevention. Ask me 3 reflective questions to assess how I'm managing energy, boundaries, and workload as a therapist owner. So we have a lot on our plates. And so sometimes we want to go through and say, hey, how do we review? How do we look at burnout? How do we slow down a little bit? How do we make sure that we're going at a pace that's good and important and that we slow down? And so like you may be thinking, wow, Joe, you just did 3 podcast interviews and yawned in the middle of this solo episode. Maybe you should take a break. And I am going to take a break. I'm going to go walking with the dog after work. I have improv tonight. But managing those things is really important. So let's go through these 15 again. Turn bulleted notes into full SOAP notes. Create treatment plans that pass insurance audits. Build client homework or between session tools, summarize sessions for client follow-up, simplify intake forms and screening tools, handle your inbox with AI summaries, automate scheduling and reminders, draft legal or policy documents, create a simple budget and cash flow plan, write job descriptions and interview questions, use AI as your personal private practice strategist. Number 12, explore ethical dilemmas. Number 13, speed up CEU learning. 14, repurpose one piece of content into 5. And number 15, check on your own burnout. Now, the future of therapy isn't going to be replaced by clinicians, but we know Harvard just released a study looking at the most common uses for Gen Z in regards to ChatGPT and its mental health issues. You, as a mental health expert, need to be involved in this conversation. We know that AI is here for good, for bad, for ugly, and we know that it's going to continue to expand. And so we can either, the president of the college I used to work at used to say, you're either at the table for dinner or you're on the menu, which is a very black and white way of looking at it. Like you're either in control or you're being eaten. Not sure I fully agree with that, but the idea of saying, how do we get more involved with the discussion around AI, with the creation of tools and apps? We need to have our fingers in this stuff so that we can influence it in the way that we think is healthy for the world. We are the experts that we're waiting for, and I really hope that you go out there and get involved with AI, get involved with creating apps, get involved in doing things that are going to help better the world so that our voice is known within that. Otherwise, other people will take our voice and are going to create things that just aren't healthy for the world. If you want to learn how to integrate AI systems, have smart business strategy in your practice, I would love to invite you to join the Practice Academy. That is our membership community where you can sign up for one of our 3 tracks depending on your phase of practice. We have a track for every single phase of practice. You can read more over at practiceofthepractice.com/membership. Again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/membership. Also, we couldn't do this without our amazing sponsors. And today we have Jot Psych as our sponsor. It's the first AI-powered EHR built for therapists. It automatically writes your notes and handles scheduling, forms, and more. You can try it free and get 50% off your first 2 months with code JOE at jotpsych.com. That's JOT psych.com. Use promo code JOE at checkout. Thank you so much for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music, and this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.